All right, the property prequel, be in the know before you buy. Firstly, as always, really appreciative, grateful for all the support on the show. Really excited. As mentioned, all the feedback we get, it allows us to get better guests on, which only pumps the value back to the community. So we don't really run ads. We don't pump money into this. It's purely just to add value back to the community. So appreciate all the feedback we've been getting. Today we got a guest ep. I'm really excited around this one, arguably one of the industry heavyweights. We're going to touch not only on, I guess, the success side and the habits and all those sorts of things, but some real value as well to buyers, because I find people in this industry who are crushing goals, they've actually got some real good nuggets that are going to add value to buyers out there. So, and even if you're an industry professional, I think this one's going to be one to turn up. So we got Michael Kollosche from Kollosche. You'd be under a rock if you haven't heard the brand. I feel one of the strongest brands in the industry at the moment. So, Michael, mate, appreciate your time.
No, thanks for having me.
Mate, what's driving you at the moment?
What's driving me at the moment? I don't know. Every day it's how do we get better? How do we spend our whole time pretending we're number two? And how do we improve the customer experience? How do we improve the experience for our team? How do we innovate in the industry? Obviously, we're in an industry that probably overall doesn't have the best reputation, and that's probably because there's not a high barrier to entry. So a lot of people will come in from other industries with no background in property, no degrees, no understanding of the market, transactions, no skill set, and then next thing they're out on the street selling people's biggest assets. And so it's challenging, and so we try and forge a path to change that mindset and to help lead the industry to better experiences, more transparency. Integrity's a big part of our business.
Yeah.
And by doing that, we want to make it as easy as possible for buyers and sellers to transact, but also minimise the collateral damage that they have from bad experiences.
Where do you feel that comes from, like that mindset shift on wanting to change the industry?
Look, I think it's about forming long-term relationships with people. So you spend such an enormous amount of time building a brand, but also building relationships with customers that you need to be transacting with them many times and through the whole course of their property journey. So we try to position ourselves more as a strategic advisor that allows us to provide advice to them that is probably in their best interest as opposed to what's going to meet our own agenda. So, and if you can do that, the business continues to come. People understand that you're genuine. You put their interest ahead of your own, and then you end up with this attraction business that just keeps growing.
You say they're like attraction business. I definitely feel that. You know, you say Kollosche and people kind of know the brand, the colour, the K, all those sorts of things. I'm really interested. Like I love Richard Branson, obviously one of the best entrepreneurs on the planet, people always talk to him and he always uses the word brand. What's brand for you? I see a lot of similarity. Like, do you put brand up there as one of the key components to the success?
Yeah, look, the customer and the brand has to come first, so over everything else. And so the customer experience needs to be the best that it can be, and brand comes ahead of everyone. And so we have a really strong understanding within the business that that's the way it's structured. So company team I is that sort of philosophy. Company comes first, then you put the team, and then the individual last. And so when making decisions or when doing things, I tell the team, I want you to act as if you're an owner in this business. A lot of the agents that work with us run their own businesses and just have a non-exclusive license to use the brand, and so you have to operate in a manner that puts that ahead of everything else. And when you do, you through this business, you'll come across issues and challenges sometimes with clients. So how do we actually take ownership over what's happened and work through and try and resolve it to ensure that we leave this interaction with everyone having a good experience? So, and when you have that mindset, it'll transform your business.
It's interesting there, like you just mentioned, like you do, like looking at it, you've got some high performers in your team, and some people maybe think like it is like, why wouldn't they just go start their own business, or they can do their own thing? But you said there it's effectively professionals attaching themselves to a brand. So I guess that's a really good point there on the importance to some of these high performers that they want to align themselves with brands. So I guess that's a good little takeaway, not only for the industry, but I think any business. Would you agree?
Yeah, and look, our brand provides systems and processes and training and support that they then have access to. So they have that non-exclusive license, and they pay us a fee for those things, and we help support them and try and get the best out of them and their team.
Yeah, yeah. And mate, just quickly shuffling back a bit. So we'll dive and unpack where you are now. But mate, where did it sort of start? Like, whereabouts are you from? And
many, many years ago it started. So I left school, I can go back a little bit earlier. So I was originally from Melbourne, got sent up here to boarding school at TSS, finished school.
Yeah.
And then went to university for 12 months. But
what'd you study?
I started to do a business journalism degree.
A journo?
Yeah, and wasn't really enjoying it.
Couldn't see you being a journo.
Look, English was actually one of my my top subjects at school, so I was one of the top in the state there.
Yeah, wow.
As well as business, economics, and marketing. So off the back of that, I sort of headed down that path more so because I think everyone expected me to, but property was something I always wanted to get into, and so I started back in '97 in real estate, which was
as a sales agent,
as actually on reception. So
that
was my first role. Then moved into what they call these days a sales associate. And then from there into a sales agent. And,
What office on the Gold Coast?
Ray White, Broadbeach.
Yeah. There you go.
Yep.
What when you're a receptionist, because this might tap into the person who might be sitting in the office right now, whether it's real estate or whatever, and they might feel like insignificant and they see the high performer in the office. Did you have envisions on being, where you are now when you're a receptionist, or were you just finding your feet?
I was probably grateful for the opportunity, which I was pretty hungry for at the start, and then just worked my way through. And I obviously used to go and sit with a lot of industry experts and talk to them and get advice. And look, knowledge is power. You don't need to be old to be successful. And with access to information these days online, which we didn't necessarily have back there, you can grow a lot quicker if you're hungry for it. So I was working with Ray White in my late teens, and then I moved into a few other businesses, and then I came back at about the age of 25, I think, and then worked with them, and quickly grew to be their number one international salesperson for probably my last 4 years that I was with them. And then in 2011, I think it was, I took 5 years off, and then came back in I think it was sometime in 2016. Started my own business with a business partner, and then decided to go out on my own and start my own business on the 1st of January 2019, which is what we have now. So and took about 10 people with me. So.
Starting your own business, you're obviously working within a business before, but then making that change to having a business partner doing your thing. What was the biggest holdback, you think, or what did you have to move through to make that leap, just to add some value to? Because I know a lot of people want to do it, but they don't know. I mean, me and you sitting here, and I learn off you a lot, but there's a lot of things that you don't even know are coming. But what do you think? Advice to someone who's in that position now?
I think it takes a certain mindset to be a business owner.
100%.
You actually have to put yourself last. So it has to be about, how do I help all of those around me get what they want? And then if they can get what they want and they can succeed, ultimately I'm a beneficiary of that. And if you've got that mindset, then you'll have a very successful business. But if you're putting yourself ahead of everyone else, and it's all about you, and everyone should be entitled to be working alongside you, grateful to be working alongside you, then it's not going to go far. So, and it's the same with the customer experience. So, how do I put my customers first? If they win, I win. And ultimately, then you can build significant value. And we built a platform that allowed others to come in, and we taught them how to obviously get the best out of them, and created a lot of systems and processes to ensure that the customer experience and the team experience was the same for everyone. And off the back of that, it's allowed us to grow quite quickly.
Quite quickly, yeah.
We did start with the end in mind, but also probably the biggest lessons that I learned along the way was really you've got to recruit the right people. So it's the ones that you say no to that make your business.
Ooh, like that.
And don't be attracted by someone just because they earn a lot of money or they have a high profile when their morals or ethics don't align with yours. So,
well, that probably leads me to the next point. It sounds like culture's something you value.
Yeah, definitely.
Put importance on. What with culture? Where did that come from? Experience? Did that come from where did it shift for you? Where it's like, actually, wow, I'm actually realizing the more I take culture seriously, the more I make recruitment decisions based on culture, I'm seeing success. It takes some people never find that path, right? But was there a moment where it clicked for you?
Yeah, look, culture's a pretty loose term these days everywhere. Everyone talks about culture, but it's how you actually walk it. And so you've got to be prepared to make those hard decisions. When you're looking at things, you've got to understand how is that going to impact. You've got to take people along the journey with you. And so I think it's different. Like, a lot of people talk about having a great culture, but you've got to really live and breathe it, and you've got to protect it. And so when people come into our business and we do our induction program, we sit down, and the question I say to them is, what is it that attracted you to our business? And for the most part, it's, you look like you've got a great culture. We've seen so many people flourish and grow under the brand. I'm like, great, well, ultimately we have that in here. So now you coming in, it's your responsibility to protect that, because it's the person that comes in that completely derails that. So it's ensuring that you have those conversations, you manage those expectations. And so then if someone's a little bit off track, you can sit down and go, hey, remember we spoke about this?
Upfront.
And you can address that and you can deal with it. And look, people go through challenges from time to time, and it's just having the conversations. Leave your ego at the door. Once people understand that you are stronger together, and if you collaborate and you work together and you try and help each other, you're going to go a lot further than businesses that are individual silos where they just don't communicate, they don't support each other. You can't even have a conversation in the same room without someone hearing something that they're going to utilize against you, or so there's no trust around it. So it's critical that you have the right people. And I guess I had another agent that joined our business a couple of years ago, and when we were talking, and they were quite a successful agent, we were talking about, and I had them interview 3 or 4 times, and I said, listen, my only concern is that other people have told me that you don't play well with others. And their response was, the environment that I'm in, I've had to adapt to, because where I am isn't conducive to collaboration, and I cannot trust those around me. So ultimately, I just adapted to the surroundings, and that team joined our business and have now collaborated with everyone. They've been extremely successful, and to their credit, they're a really big part of our culture and help everyone and support everyone. So, but the environment they were in previously didn't allow them to do that.
Yes.
So it's and off the back of that, they've sort of 3x'd their personal best anyway in their first 12 months, and maintaining it again this year. So.
Wow, that's unreal, and I think that's a really key takeaway, not only for this industry, but I guess life, right? And I'm reflecting back to when I used to play in professional sport in the NRL, and you'd see these kids, and we had a set culture, like you said, an environment. And I remember one year we had the wooden spoon, and you realise the new coach who would raise the standard cleaned out a lot of and it wasn't so much the players within it was the environment we were around and the standards that was set. And it's just funny that I'm just reflecting now. It's really true, isn't it? Like you can't really judge someone on where they're at. It could be the environment they're placed in.
And it's hard because you want to give people security in their environment, but you also want to remove people that are negatively going to impact
it.
the entire business and the culture of the business because they don't understand it. So like my conversation we've got salaried employees and we've got a number of businesses that have non-exclusive licenses to operate their own businesses in collaboration. And so when we sit down and we talk with all of these different people at different parts of the brand, how do you make them feel secure? How do you try and get the best out of them? How do you help them grow? But if someone's doing the wrong thing and you've got to remove them, how does that then impact on others feeling, oh, hang on. And it's not about that. Like, I'm a firm believer, the more value you add, the more money you'll make and the more successful you'll become. So I don't agree with people just getting paid to turn up. Ultimately, anyone in the business has an opportunity to be the best they can if they're hungry and they want to learn and they take initiative. So it's just, how do you keep pushing through that and get the best out of them? But when you do that, they have to be rewarded. They have to be recognised. So it's just a balance there.
You mentioned that one of my favourite quotes, like, more impact equals more income. So it kind of relates on that. I was just going to say, like, in terms of impact into team and thing, obviously that's an important part. If you were to label from your experience 3 key characteristics of high performers that you've identified, what would those be?
Discipline, humility, and I think a willingness to help others around them get what they want and succeed.
So nearly like detaching from self, like thinking everyone needs a win here, kind of thing.
And ultimately, I remember I was talking with Tom Panos a while ago, and he sat in on a negotiation with a deal previously with me, and at the end of it, he said, I've got it. He said, I know what it is. And I said, what's that? He said, I can see you have no attachment to the fee. So ultimately, yes, I want to get paid. Ultimately, yes, I want to be paid commensurate to the value that I bring to the table. But when I'm doing the deal, whether the deal happens or not, I have no attachment to it. So what is in the best interest of the client drives me. And it can be a $20 million transaction that I'm going to get paid very handsomely on, but I actually don't have any attachment to that up until the point that the transaction's done. What is in the best interest of the client, and what meets their personal agenda? That's where my interests lie, and I don't know why. I've always been that way. So
it's a really good framework. What about in terms of, this might add some value to buyers out there at the moment? You know, obviously us in the industry doing multiple transactions, and you get in the rhythm and you just kind of know. But what about those people entering the transaction? One thing I always see with novice buyers is it's all about, like, I'm the buyer, you're the seller, like, let's clash heads, and I want to get it cheap, you want to get it most expensive, and just sort of a clash. It sounds like you're kind of creating like a win-win environment all around. Like, any key tips there for buyers now understanding that that's your framework on the seller's end? Obviously there's a buyer on the other side too that effectively is not your paying client, but you need that, I guess, buyer to make the deal a happy medium for everyone. Any tips there on how to, I guess, break that gap between?
So you've done, and your business has done a lot of work with us on transactions, so you'll see how we prepare for the inquiry. So we're a firm believer that you want to prepare all of the due diligence that the most fastidious, diligent buyer is going to need up front. Make it easy for them to say yes. So everyone buys with emotion but justifies with logic. So ultimately you want to be able to give them all of the tools and the information that helps them with the logic, but the emotional part will come with competitive tension when fear of loss kicks in. So that's why we do a lot of auctions and do them very successfully. Unfortunately, a lot of competitors don't understand the psychology of a buyer or the auction process, so they don't spend their time gathering bidders through that process, which creates a bad experience for both buyer and seller. But what we try and do is prepare all of the information. We don't try and do it, we do. We prepare all the information, we do all the due diligence to make sure that we're transparent, and that if there are any issues there, we've uncovered them early. We prepare all the comparable sales data in real detail, so someone who doesn't understand the market can actually look at that and go, okay, I can see that these 6 or 7 transactions happen, and it's not just printing it off RP data. It's like, what is the background behind that transaction?
Yes.
So I'm doing one at the beachfront at the moment, so I can turn around and say, okay, well, look, on the beachfront in Mermaid Beach, 21 hedges sold for 8.7 million, but it's a 2-story height limit or 9 metre height limit. It's only got a 10 metre frontage. The dwelling was built in the 1960s, and it was about 88 square metres in size. So it's deemed land value, which works out to be a square metre rate of X. Then 69 hedges sold for 8.65. Can talk through the exact same reasons. The height limit there is also 9 metres, 2 stories, 10 metre frontage, but that particular dwelling falls about 2 metres away from the road, which impacts on what you could potentially build on it. And then you walk down and you can go, okay, but we sold 143 to 145 hedges for 19.2. Vacant land, 20 metre frontage, 23,400 a square metre, but that's in a 15 metre height limit, 3 stories as of right. So therefore there's a difference between those when you're building on a single or a double block. Then how does that then relate to someone that's going to go and bid on the property at 2 Surf Street that I've got that's going to auction, which is a 15 metre height limit, 3 stories, but it's 12.5 metres wide instead of 10 metres wide. So instead of building a house that's 7.5 metres wide internally, you can build something that's probably 10 metres wide. So you're 33% or 25% larger in width when you're actually building your final dwelling. It's a north-facing corner. You can talk through how limited they are. So you give people all the context, but then you can turn around and go, okay, so 405 square metre blocks that we've sold with nice homes on it, 133 hedges sold for 17.5, was lightweight construction. It was 765 square metres in size. And you can talk through all of that, and these are the features, and this is what it had. It was only 10 metre frontage on a 15 metre height limit. So if someone buys this block and wants to duplicate that style of home, all of a sudden in their mind they're going, I know where I can operate. One Heron sold for 19 million, 556 square metre block, has an A-line impediment, meant they had to build 9.1 metres off the boundary, but behind it it's got an easement as well. So therefore the actual site coverage for that particular dwelling was quite small. So provide all that context. Someone coming in who knows nothing about it can read it and go, I can get a pretty fair assessment as to where this should sit, and then it's going to come down to competition and seller's motivation on the day. But unfortunately, most people don't do that. So then the buyer has to go and do their due diligence. They rely on talking to a lot of agents that don't necessarily know the market, or they think that all blocks are equal because they haven't been given any homework around that, which means that when they turn up to auction, they go, well, I only want to pay what 21 hedges sold for or what 69 hedges sold for because they're both 400 square metre blocks, rather than, okay, looking at that and going, if I look at all of the points there, I've just built value. So there's the logic piece. Now the emotional piece will be how much do they want it, who's there on the day, and how motivated are the sellers to divest the asset. So if you go through that process where you're giving people as much information as possible, and you can be talking about local area plans that are rezoning and things that are going to happen in the area. My sister bought a property the other day. We were trying to do some DD. I spoke to Guy Powell. He turned around and said, look, the closest things I've got, this one sold in Albion, this one sold over here. And once he was able to point those out, her expectations changed. She felt comfortable in where she was going to bid to, because she was able to go, okay, well, I can see there's these precedents, and I know what I'm buying is going to be rezoned down the track. So it's just help the buyer feel comfortable with the decision they make.
So it's nearly limiting the indecision out of the transaction as best you can. So what it sounds like, I mean, it's a big one, right, for agent. There's a lot of there's upfront work then, which you're right, it's a low barrier to entry.
Do it at the start, though.
Yeah, exactly.
So you get a listing, you do it, you spend a day preparing it, and then anyone that inquires has got everything, and then the whole process becomes easier.
I can vouch for that, obviously, as a buyer's agent, knowing working with a lot of your guys and girls. It's very handy. Like it is, because we do it as buyer's agent, but if we can run our checks with your checks and it all stacks up, it's very, very, it makes us register for auction a lot quicker. So that's a real testament. So it's a good
But it also gives you confidence to give someone advice to bid to a certain level.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we get it less than that, fantastic, great.
Yeah.
However, we can see that this is where comparable sales
Yeah.
have pegged the value on this.
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately, if they spend 3 or 4 weeks mentally owning it, moving into it, what happens when someone's going to take the keys away from them?
Yeah, and that's the auction
the auction.
mentality and emotions. Mate, you mentioned there on seller motivation, which I think might add some value to buyers here. We're obviously in a very low supply, still high demand market here on the Gold Coast, but I mean, I got buyers agents in Brizzy and all over the place talking, and it seems the same nationwide. Low supply, high demand, confidence is up, especially along the eastern seaboard. Some sellers still misaligned or maybe expectations on things. How much emphasis do you put on your team with, and I say this because I notice a lot of your team are good at the vendor upfront conversations that they need to have. How much emphasis do you put on seller motivation in terms of the deal happening? And if a seller is motivated but unrealistic, or from your, like you've said there, like your data might be
if you do that preparation and you give the seller all of that data and they sign off on that CMA, they've already aligned in their mind based on all the comparable sales, this is where the value of my home sits. But what buyers need to understand is with an auction, they need to play their part. So too many people don't want to put forward an offer, but for a seller to actually understand where market value is and align with the market,
they need to see where the
market feedback's at. So if you're a buyer and you're looking at an auction, go through. Like my sister, when she went through that one the other day, she gave an offer at 2.6 million. In her head, she was hoping that 2.8 was probably the max ceiling, but on the day she paid 3. So ultimately, giving the feedback in the form of a written offer through the process helps the seller understand where the market is and align to the market so that when the offer comes on the day for auction, they're ready to meet the market as well. The market needs to play its part as well. And too many people want to go through that process. And I say to people, look, you don't need to give me your best offer prior to auction.
Just give me something.
Just give me something.
Yeah.
And then we'll ascertain whether or not the seller actually wants to sell prior to auction. And if they do, we'll explore it and we'll try and put a deal together. And if they don't, well, you've still left some in the tank anyway. And as an agent, and this is where a lot of people fail, you have to be able to confidently give that person an undertaking. You will not sell it to another party if another offer comes in to stop the auction without going back to them.
Yeah.
And too many people in our industry don't do that.
Yeah.
They will get an offer to stop the auction and they'll sell it and they will not ring any other buyer. And we just had an example recently up at Abel Tasman, and everyone got it wrong. So the valuer put 4.2 to 4.4 on it for a pre-sale valuation. We thought it was probably going to sit at around 4.75. Maybe we'd get to late 4s. The comparable sales we did came in from late 3s to mid 4s. And the vendor said, if I can get 5,150, I'll sell it.
Yeah.
And the day we released it, we had an offer at 4.75 million from the adjoining owner. They would have got to 5 million to stop the auction, but we didn't have any competitive tension, so we just parked them there at that point in time. And then we ran our first open home. We had 23 inspections through. Then we got a whole heap of other offers from 3.8 to 4.2. And one other guy came through and he said, look, I really like it, but I'm going to go and buy this thing on the weekend off Ray White, which goes up for auction next Sunday, unless I can have a crack at this. I said, mate, look, ultimately, the owner wants to go to auction with us. However, if you're going to do that, I'd suggest you put your best foot forward. And at least that way you can walk away and say, I gave it my best chance to secure it, and if you don't, then go and buy the other property. So he said, okay, let me talk to my wife. He came back, gave us an offer at 5.5. And the owner turned around and said, okay, that's great, we'll take it. I said, well, no, we've still got to go back to every other party. So we end up ringing him up and said, look, we're meeting again this afternoon with the rest of the family. Can I just be sure that I've got your best out of you? Because it piqued their interest, but at this point in time, they haven't confirmed to sell it at that level. And if you want to give me your best foot forward, I'll have a real crack at it this afternoon. He rang me back, said, yeah, we'll go to 565. So he's increased a bit further. We then went back to every other party and said, we've got an offer at 565 that's going to stop the auction. You've got to close the business to participate. And then off the back of that, everyone said that's a fantastic offer, they should take it. But the next door neighbour came back and said, oh, we really want to buy it, we want to participate. It's a big number, but let us think about it. And I said, well, look, all I can tell you is It's now moving into a multiple offer.
Yeah.
So you get one opportunity to put your best foot forward. Whoever has the offer on the most favourable terms wins. We don't come back to either party. We don't disclose what either party offers.
Yeah.
But the guy at 565 will also get an opportunity to better his offer.
Yeah.
So we went back. They came back to us and said, look, we're just going to need a couple of hours to talk about it. I said, no problem. You got a few hours. They came back and increased. And I said, you should make it your best offer. So an offer that you put your head on the pillow at night. So we gave it every opportunity. And if we miss it, we miss it. But we got no regrets. And so they came back and they made their offer at $6,070,000. And so we received that offer. It's in writing, and went back to the other guy at 565 and said, mate, got some good news and some bad news. The good news is they're going to stop the auction. The bad news is they've asked us to go back to everyone, and one other party now wants to participate in a multiple offer. They put their best foot forward. I can't tell you what that is, but I can tell you it's a significant increase on yours. So you got one opportunity to put your best foot forward, and that's it. He said, oh, can you tell me? I said, mate, we can't tell you anything. He said, well, what if I give you a 50 grand increase? I said, mate, if it's a 50 grand increase, it ain't going to do it. Go and buy the other property on the weekend and be happy out there. And they said, what if I give you 100? I said, mate, I'm not going to play this game, unfortunately, because I've given them my word I wouldn't, but at 100, it's not going to do it. So have a chat with your wife, put your best foot forward, whatever that is. I'll take it to the seller, and then I'll come back to both of you and let you know who secured the property. And so he rang me back 15 minutes later and he said, sounds like it starts with a 6. And I said, mate, I'm not going to play this game.
Yeah.
He said, all right, what if I give you 6.2? I said, well, mate, are you prepared to give me 6.2? He said, I don't know. He said, can I ring my wife? I said, ring your wife, ring me back. But ultimately, I'm not going to let you know where it needs to be. You just got to put your best foot forward. He rang me back 10 minutes later. He said, all right, prepare a contract for 6.2. And so we signed it up and sold it to him for 6.2. And unfortunately, the other people missed out, which was disappointing. And you don't know whether or not in competition they'd have gone further or not, but they both ended up going considerably higher than they thought. So you don't know how far people are going to go. And that's why as an agent's job, when they're representing a seller, they need to actually give everyone the courtesy of going back to them, because I hear so many times where someone will sell something cheap to another party, but they've spent the whole time, like there was one on I won't say the street because I'll know who the agent was from a different business, but they spent the whole time through this EOI campaign telling him offers over $12 million. The sellers told me it has to be offers over $12 million. They get to the end of the EOI campaign, they get two offers, one at $8 million and one at $9 million. The seller took the 9 million 30 days, did not go back to anyone else who would have paid 10.5, 11. There was 4 buyers that I knew of that got so upset. They said, we didn't put anything in because he told us we had to be offers over 12. So they've appointed a family friend to sell this property who's just probably cost them the best part of $2 million.
Yeah. It's a really, it's such good insight there, Michael, and I appreciate you sharing that, because 2 parts, right? The first part is, I guess, on the sales agent side. You see, like as a buyer's agent, I get to see all the different, I can see the lazy ones who do that first. And that's why I always, key tip to buyers, like we won on the weekend, the agent said they had a lot of angry buyers, but a lot of them danced her out. They gave them low balls, and we advised our client, we noticed how many were out there. We just came hard, fair, good terms, done. And all these other buyers were pissed, but they put, $1 million under, like just trying to play the game. So that's one part, because you can hear there, like one part of it is if you're a buyer, like if you like the property, like you said before, you got to act. You actually have to show intent to buy. But second part is on the seller's side, as agents, key tip there is to get the best price, you got to do some work. You got like there would have been a few calls back and forths and this and going back, but I really like that, because some agents I feel that I've noticed first in, best dressed, deal done, we're on to the next one. And you're right. So in this game, we're not playing for little money. Sometimes you can cost either a buyer or seller substantial amount. So,
and that's why I find it funny when an agent is appointed based on his fee, rather than based on the experience or the value they bring to the table.
Yes.
So someone might turn around and say, you know what, we're going to go with this person because they're 1% cheaper, and they're going to pay for the marketing, and they're going to do this, but they've got no experience whatsoever. They don't know what they're doing. They don't understand the process, and they can potentially cost them 10, 20, 30% on the end value.
100%.
So most people may have taken that offer at 475 on Abel Tasman, got them to 5 million, did the deal, done, and then the seller's out of pocket 1.2. So And look, I feel for the people that missed out, but ultimately it's our job,
your job.
to get the best price.
Yeah.
And that's where we earn our fee, and that's what separates us and our agents from anyone else in the industry.
Yeah. Mate, it's unreal insight, mate. As we wrap up, Michael, mate, I'm just curious, for buyers now, you've obviously been in this industry a long time. What's some key, I guess, actions or characteristics you find the best buyers do versus those buyers who, 2 years later, they're still at your open homes? Like, what's the key difference?
I think you have to actually, one, do your homework. Obviously, when you're dealing with us or someone like yourself, they can educate you on the market, and you've got to get educated really quickly
100%.
because in a rising market, a quarter can cost you 5%.
Yeah, definitely.
And you look back and go, geez, I should have bought that first one I looked at because now it's 200 grand more and I can't get back in. So that's the first component. Get yourself in a position to make unconditional cash offers. So talk to your broker, understand what you can borrow, do all that stuff early because that's going to help you when you're in a competitive environment and you can walk in and say, hey, I'm cash and I can settle in 30 or 45 days, waive the calling off period, 10% deposit. So those things obviously give you leverage in a negotiation. And then probably the next component of that is just actually giving genuine feedback to agents.
Yeah.
They appreciate it.
Yeah.
I had a look at this property. I think it sits here based on all of these comparables I'm looking at. I wouldn't buy it because the house on the eastern side of it is blocking out all the sunlight or this or that, whatever it is. And they may come back and try and debate certain things with you or whatever, but don't be afraid to give genuine feedback because the vendors want it.
Yeah.
They need it.
Definitely, yeah.
And if you can actually give them that, it will help your cause to help align them for the eventual sale price. And tell an agent, hey, look, I genuinely have interest in this property. I'm happy to put forward an offer at this level. And then if that doesn't bite and you want to sit on the sidelines, make it clear to them, please, if you get another offer that looks like it's going to stop the auction or it's going to stop the auction, engage with me. Put it in writing. Send them an email because it's very hard for them to overlook that then. And then you don't end up with these lazy agents that go and undersell something and you miss out when you would have actually paid considerably more. But you need to express your interest. So this whole ducks and drakes and playing games and not being transparent doesn't actually help your cause. You turn up on auction day and it's already been sold because you haven't expressed your interest. So, and when you get there on auction day, have a strategy. A lot of people sit there and they're like, I'm not going to bid until it's on the market. Well, that doesn't help anyone. And then you move from a position where a seller actually has multiple registered bidders that may actually adjust their reserve and put it on the market in the hope it's going to run to someone that then is negotiating in a logical standpoint and you really lose any leverage you have as a buyer. So I'm a firm believer that at an auction, you've got to participate, you've got to bid, and then you've got to have a strategy around it. If I'm bidding for a client, I'm bidding aggressively. I'm bidding quickly. It doesn't matter what the increments are. I want everyone else to know that I'm not going to pull my punches and I don't have a budget and I'm walking away with the keys regardless because you put the pressure back on them. So you might have a limit that you're going to go to. You got to run to that limit. And I know everyone wants to try and save money by going slower, but you find that you get death by 1,000 cuts where it just keeps going, as opposed to if you bid against me, by the time the words have come out of your mouth, I'm going again. And by doing that, it puts the pressure back on the other person, like, oh shit, these people aren't going to stop. As opposed to when you're sitting there and you're hesitating, you're thinking about it for a minute, and then they're like, wow, they're nearly on their last leg, so it just keeps going and going and going, rather than just being quite aggressive with it. And I've seen it happen. I've bid against billionaires on properties for clients, and I've gone so aggressive, and every time they've bid, I've gone back within 2 seconds, and they've walked away millions less than they would have paid simply because they thought I wasn't going to stop.
Intent was going to, Well, I mean, I love that, and I try to educate buyers that the pressure's on the decision maker. So if you can limit the amount of time that decision, boom, back on the other person. So that's a really good tip there. You just mentioned there as well, like I call it like walking to the cliff. So it's a really good little insight there into that's some MK nuggets there. That's a good one, mate. Just to finish, Oh, and lastly, tip for buyers. I just wrote this down because this happened on the weekend. We spoke to our client around the possibility of going unconditional. They had a finance clause, but we actually spoke to them. This is a huge one because you're exactly right. Some people think, the finance clause is a finance clause and they're there to protect the buyer. But have you spoken to your broker on the situations? Like what is the worst case scenario? And like for this, for instance, we had a client that if the property, we end up getting in high ones, if it valued in under $1 million, that they're pretty much near, unless it valued at like 700 grand, they're sweet.
Yep.
So all of a sudden they thought they don't need a finance clause. Like it's all good. And we ended up getting it because of that reason. So I love how you said.
And when you got the comparable sales data there prepared, you can say, based on all these comparable sales, the prospects of that happening are zero.
Exactly.
Yep.
Zero. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly right. So I love that. That's a real big one for buyers. Terms, try and clean up your terms if you can. Mate, just to finish on, this is more of I'm a bit of a habit fiend and mate, every time I see you getting fitter and fitter. So mate, what's some key habits for your success? Everyone, I'm a big habit fiend. What's your typical habits that you non-negotiable?
I think routine sets you free. So Monday to Saturday, I train every day.
Your morning or
in the morning. Yep. So I go for a walk from 5 till 6. So I do 10,000 steps in the morning.
Yep.
And then from 6 till 7, I'm in the gym. And then after that, a couple of days a week, I'll do steam sauna, cold plunge at home.
Yep.
And then I live by design. So I try and put things in place to limit my ability to fail.
Yes.
So I've got a full-time chef that makes sure that I'm eating clean, eating healthy. He comes at 6:30 every morning, so I get upstairs, protein shakes are done, fruit platters are out, coffees are there, makes lunches that are clean and healthy. Dinner comes back at 5 every night, makes dinner. All the produce is organic. So we do that Sunday night to Friday night, and then he has Saturdays off. So, but things like that just prevent me from going off track or off course. So it's just I try and keep into that. I have a massage once a week, see the osteo once a week, see the chiro once every 2 or 3 weeks, and that's just all maintenance to keep you dealing with stress. We've got Annetta that works in the business, so sit there and do a 20-30 minute sort of reset of the body and nervous system through meditation,
sympathetic, parasympathetic, and all that. Yeah, unreal.
So. But you've got to book it in and then run your business around that. Yes. So too many people let their business run them. So I just lock all these things in that are non-negotiable. And then same with me, like if I don't book in, like every 2 weeks the lady comes to my house, cuts my hair. I just have to book it in and done, and it just has to be on repeat because then I can work everything else around it. And so it's the easiest way to operate.
You control your life. Don't let the business control you.
Yep.
Love it. Me and my EA, we actually had a meeting just the other day. She's sitting in here and we planned out the calendar of all the non-negotiables, and a lot of it was, I listen to Dan Martell a lot, and he says, look at your calendar and then there's green light and red light and try and fill your thing. Green light's things that lift you up, like exercise, things that are filling the cup up, maybe your high dollar productive things that you love. And then a lot of people are spending most of their weeks in red light. Like they're doing things that are draining them. They're not recharging. They're not putting health first. They're trying to fit it in.
And they're not as productive in those areas because they're not getting the
other. Love it.
So if you love surfing or whatever, but you should put your holidays in at the start of every year, 12 months in advance, and just these are the places we're going to go. This is the time we're going to have off, and just set all that up and live life by design.
Love it. Mate, last question. What's Michael Kollosche's, what legacy, like what is it for you? Like what's the next 5, 10, 15 years you feel look like?
Look, I'm really enjoying building a team of people around me and watching their success, but the legacy for us is just to clean up the industry. I'd love to see a higher barrier to entry. I'd love to see a lot more compliance. I'd love to see those that are giving us a bad name and performing very poorly and costing buyers and sellers a lot of money through the way that they operate pulled up properly. Like none of this toothless tiger stuff, but actually start shutting down some of these people. Like there's some of our competitors that have so many dummy bidders at their auctions and they never get pulled up. Like I got clients ring me going, mate, I'm not going to deal with that person because they're and you know full well, and like that just keeps getting swept under the rug. I'd love to see something where this industry is one of the most
like respected,
professions.
I agree.
Up there with lawyers, doctors, because with the right knowledge, the right training, the right support, and acting as a strategic advisor for clients. So that's what they come to you for. How do I make the right decision for me? Not necessarily from a financial planner's perspective, but steer me on the right path to achieve the best result or the best price when I'm selling, help me through the buyer journey, help me on investment strategies, all sorts of stuff there that are actually going, like they come to you as a professional.
Yes.
And then have some sort of accreditation there so you can actually see the difference between the different parties you deal. Like ideally, that would be the best outcome for this industry long term, and it's probably a big ask. But same with all the off the plan and project stuff. What are the pitfalls? Like there's so many different things at the moment. People entering into off the plan contracts. Every single contract should, as of right, have a sunrise clause. That is 12 months. So if they're not building within 12 months of signing the contract, you have an opportunity as a buyer to terminate. This whole thing where they don't have them and they've got 5 years and they lock you up forever and they don't build it creates a really bad experience for everyone in the industry. And then your sunset date, leave that at 5.5 years. I'm a firm believer once someone's actually got 100 million or 20 million or 50 million or 200 million on the ground building, they want it finished as quick as possible. So there's no point adjusting those and bring them forward. Just create and learn from all of these nuances that are tripping consumers up because they're not educated, they don't understand that. And yes, you probably look at your lawyers and hope that they're going to do that, but for the most part, some of these contracts go to junior lawyers, they miss things, or this is just a standard contract, we don't have the right to change it. Things like seller's warranties and defect periods and things like that. So getting to a stage where we're actually working on cleaning those things up to protect the consumer, without making it too onerous on the development side as well. I'm a firm believer that we should move to a point where you pay a 10% deposit when you buy something off the plan. You should pay another 10% deposit once they start construction.
Off the ground,
you should pay another 10% deposit when they're midway through it, and then by the time you're nearing settlement, you're in for at least 30%. You're less likely to fall apart. It's going to help funders. It's going to help security. All of those things. So, but you don't want to tie up that level of capital with the current contractual laws. So I know those things are coming in other states and they're working on it, but just continue to look through all of these things on how do we protect the consumer, but without doing it in a way that creates an enormous amount of complexity and actually backfires. So, like when they introduced this 5-day extension period and removed time of the essence on contracts, I don't reckon that helps people. Personally, you sign a contract, you have a day to complete, get your shit ready. The lawyers obviously were the catalyst for that because they weren't doing their job. They were the ones saying I need more time because they hadn't gone and organised a release of mortgage or whatever. But ultimately, that's the deadline. That's what we negotiate. Buyer and seller beware, and that's the day we need to complete and settle. And so I had a lady, she was 80-something years of age. She sold her place. The one that she was buying ended up taking the 5-day extension. So the removalists have got all of her stuff, so we're dropping it on the lawn. She's got nowhere to go. And so in the end, I had to put her up at the casino for the weekend and try and get them to store her stuff. We covered the cost of it and did it all but the whole thing was a nightmare. And so then she settled hers in the afternoon, expecting that it was going to be a simultaneous settlement of the purchase, and just creates too much complexity. So there's different things. So if these guys at a governmental level are going to do that, don't get lawyers to write it. Lawyers write it with a with their own agenda to protect themselves so that they don't get sued. And how do we make it easier for us rather than actually talking to the people in the industry to understand what is actually going to provide the best experience for the customer, and then start there. Don't look at people's agenda of trying to structure things so they don't get sued for not doing their job properly. Let's look at how do we go through every component of the industry to improve. So,
mate, I love it, and I think you're on the you're obviously passionate about the path of the creation of that, and mate, keep leading from the front. I think I just want to acknowledge you, Michael, because from myself, from not coming from this industry, coming in, I've noticed in this industry there's a bit of slime, but there's also some really high performance. That's what I love around this industry, and I really take it. It's practitioner. Like there's some really good practitioners in this industry, and you're right. It needs more respect in the name because it's a tough industry, very very tough industry. So.
And unfortunately, a lot of them don't know what they don't know because they don't get the training or the support. So even other people coming into the industry think that everyone's equal until they actually
get it,
get exposed to it.
No, I love it, mate. That's been unreal. If I'm just sort of reflecting on it now, Mike. I mean, we could go for another hour, but mate, we got things to do, mate. I think the biggest things I took away was I think the due diligence and your cross the T, dot the I's. It's very evident that it's very important to you, and I feel in this industry it's important. And mate, the last one I noticed is it's an energy game. You're doing things to keep the energy up, mate. So you're looking well. Every time I see you, were you doing weights or
everything?
Yeah,
so just keep them fit, healthy.
Love it.
Actually, the walking has made a huge difference.
You listen to anything?
You're
on the podcast?
I love the time. Yeah. But I find actually the walking was great. I never used to do that. I'd hit F45 previously, and I'd end up injured.
And bouncing around,
and bouncing around. So then I do the hour walk. I come into the gym. I'm already warmed
up,
but I'm also doing a lot of recovery these days because I used to train hard. Then I'd get injured, and then to stop and start. And so every 6 weeks you'd be like injured again. And so now it's the guy I'm training with now is doing a really, really good job.
Unreal. I heard you say that. I just got shout out to the guys at Temp Therapy, a little plug, but got the home sauna now. Game changer.
Definitely.
Game changer. Mate, appreciate your time. Huge app, a lot of value in that one. And mate, keep crushing it. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure.